I've talked on the show before about incidents of anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic bias that I've experienced. I told the story of once when I was working at Circuit City, when the now defunct electronics chain, a coworker of mine came over and said, "Oh man, these customers I was just dealing with, they were just so Jewish." Of course, my ears perk up right away, and I say, "What do you mean? What do you mean that they were so Jewish?" He said, they were trying to Jew me down on the prices, and they were just so difficult to work with. And I said, "Oh, I'm actually Jewish." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that in front of you then." That is one of the incidents that really stands out in my mind. And I've got probably a dozen or more of these incidents I've been involved with. And the good thing is that to some degree, and maybe this is because of the people I surround myself with, I've experienced fewer of these incidents over time. And I'd like to think that at least in part, it's not necessarily because these beliefs don't exist anymore. Recent surveys we've talked about show that they do exist, but because people at least have more shame about openly expressing them. There's a recent report from the Anti-Defamation League called Anti-Semitic Targeting of Journalists during the 2016 presidential campaign. And what we saw because of the Donald Trump campaign is a really, really disgusting and wretched resurgence, not necessarily of anti-Semitic beliefs, because those have been around for a very long time, but of the willingness to publicly express that anti-Semitism. One of the most targeted Jewish journalists by those associated loosely as Trump supporters has been Ben Shapiro, who's actually a conservative who was not particularly warm on Donald Trump. He was heavily targeted by anti-Semitic tweets and images and memes and attacks on the internet. And we also talked about the campaign of Trump itself, tweeting this image of Hillary Clinton next to a Star of David with a whole bunch of money, a pile of money in the background, all of this stuff. You need to be prepared for the reality that on display, public anti-Semitism is going to have a significant resurgence under President Donald Trump. We saw an incident, in fact, yesterday morning, anti-Semitic graffiti and a swastika and the words Sig Heil 2016 were on a storefront glass window in South Philadelphia. This is, from what I understand, a Jewish-owned business. And the reality is that this is going to be more and more prevalent. These views have been emboldened. Consider the alt-right. We actually, good opportunity to preview this. We have a really good video about this movement called the alt-right, which was in great part responsible for the rise of Donald Trump. We've got a long form video about the alt-right coming soon, which is a movement that is highly anti-Semitic and highly supportive of Donald Trump. And remember, Jews are the #1 victims of religious hate crimes in the United States, and it is about to get much worse. I've been speaking to people from different Jewish community groups. I've been speaking to people from the Anti-Defamation League, and this is ramping up. They are ramping up preparedness, security, resources. This is a real problem, right? This is not one of these, I wonder what might happen. We've seen what will happen under the rhetoric of a Donald Trump during the campaign. We've seen, remember that article, I forget what magazine it was in, but Melania Trump was interviewed in a magazine. I don't remember if it was Vanity Fair or Esquire. I apologize, I don't remember the article. And shortly after that, the author of that article, who happens to be Jewish, although that was not a relevant part of the content of the article, was slammed and attacked all over the internet because they were Jewish with anti-Semitic tirades, diatribes, and epithets. And prepare yourselves. This is happening. This is real. And Pat, it's probably not the only group. A lot of groups are going to be sort of fair game for targeting now under the Trump administration. Jews, just one of the ones that have been most visibly targeted already, but a lot of groups need to be ready.
We've heard mostly about how Muslims will be treated under a Trump administration because at one point he argued that a whole group of people based on their religion should not be allowed in the country, which is completely antithetical to the United States values, our Constitution. We haven't heard as much about how Judaism will be treated. But now that the alt-right's voice has kind of been legitimized with his election, we'll have to see. Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to get ugly, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, overwhelmingly Jews voting for Hillary Clinton, not for Donald Trump.